Hi, my name's Uzo Ehiogu, and I'm a clinical teaching fellow at the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital. So today I'm going to talk to you about diet and exercise. So the title of the presentation is Why Diets Don't Work, but really I guess that's probably not necessarily where I want to go with this. So what's the current situation? Currently, the current situation is this. So about 28% of adults in England and Wales are obese. And about 36%, give or take, are overweight, okay, but not necessarily obese. So obesity is an issue, okay, and it's an issue for many reasons, okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about why and how we might be able to use resistance training and exercise really to facilitate a program of body weight loss or losing weight. But before we do that, it's important to, I think, probably to put it into its philosophical context. And the philosophical context is this. In essence, most of the things we do in regards to weight loss often involve diet, some type of exercise, and then we forget about the rest of the factors that are really important. Well, in essence, if you think of it from a slightly different perspective, if you consider that there are probably 4 doctors, metaphorically speaking, that we need to engage with. One is Dr. Diet, and obviously we're going to talk about Dr. Diet today. Okay, Dr. Movement, which is physical activity. Okay, Dr. Quiet, which is effectively having time for yourself. Okay, away from the humdrum of work and family commitments and such like. If we put those 3 factors together, that often leads to happiness and Dr. Happiness. So really, in essence, I guess, the only doctors you'll ever need will be Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happiness. And none of them come with a degree in anything, okay? But it's really common sense, things that we can use on a day-to-day basis. So what about the current situation? So the current situation is this, okay, from a doctor movement perspective or an exercise perspective. Okay, if we look to the United States as an example, because that's where most of our data comes from, about 80% of Americans, okay, about 80% of Americans don't meet the current minimum requirements for exercise. And that's quite significant, okay, because only about 5% of the population actually achieve about 30 minutes of physical activity each day. Okay, and the government, okay, across the water, okay, or across the pond and also over here tell us that we should be doing that. Now, if we think about exercise, okay, about 10 years ago, there was a myth that perpetuated a lot of the media. And essentially what it said that exercise wasn't effective, okay, for weight loss. Okay, and essentially all you needed to do was to go on a diet, okay? But actually, fundamentally, diets don't work, okay? And diets don't work because we can see that the current situation suggests that they don't, okay? We only need to look at, okay, the data from England and Wales and so on. So what is the problem with diets? And the problem is this. Most of the diets we consume, okay, are diets which are very low in calorific content. So the energy is really, really low. And if you're used to eating a certain amount of food, and then you go on to a calorie-reduced diet, okay, and you're having to effectively, okay, starve yourself, okay, to reduce your body fat. Yes, you will lose weight to a degree, but actually also what you lose is muscle mass, okay, and I'll tell you why that's important in a moment. When you lose muscle mass, that also reduces your resting metabolic rate, okay? So if you don't put exercise, and there's a very particular type of exercise, resistance training or weight-based training, with also a low calorific diet, the chances are you're actually making matters worse because your resting metabolic rate will be changed, and we'll see why that's important in just a moment. So the dieting basics, or the basic biochemistry. Basically, what we want to do, okay, there's like a seesaw, really, okay, and it's really the difference between energy intake coming in and energy expenditure going out. We generally tend to expend energy when we are involved in some type of physical activity of some degree, and we take energy in when we consume food. Everybody knows that. Okay, resting metabolic rate. Now this is the important bit, and if you only take one thing away, this is the key thing to take away. So your resting metabolic rate is the amount of calories or the amount of energy that you expend, okay, at rest. So when you're in bed, lying down, doing absolutely nothing, your body is burning calories, okay? And your resting metabolic rate is that. Now, this accounts for about 70% of our daily energy expenditure. This is really important. So the resting metabolic rate, in essence, okay, if we increase our resting metabolic rate, okay, by some fold, it means that we're increasing our energy expenditure at rest. This then leads to what we call a negative energy balance, i.e. we lose weight, okay? Now, and this is the crux, dieting tends to depress or reduce your resting metabolic rate. Why? Okay, fundamentally because you lose muscle mass. So when we look at the basic biochemistry, okay, essentially most people it's going the other way around. So we're taking in loads of energy because we're eating a lot potentially, okay, or we're eating the same amount of calories and food, but our energy expenditure is quite low. So we want to try and adjust that balance. Okay, another key message to take away, and it's in essence, and this is something to consider. So muscle. Okay, in essence, as we get older, and I suspect most people watching this are probably roughly between the ages of about 30 and maybe 65. Well, as we get older, okay, we're tending, okay, to lose muscle per decade. So about 5 to 7 pounds of muscle, or lean, we call it lean body tissue, is lost per decade, unless we engage in some type of purposeful exercise, such as resistance training, lifting weights and moving heavy things. Now, what's interesting is that 5 to 7% of muscle mass that's lost per decade means that there's about a 2 to 4% drop in your resting metabolic rate. Now, we spoke about that before, didn't we? We said that resting metabolic rate was important, okay, in terms of how many calories we used whilst we were just laying down flat, doing nothing in essence. So if you think about it, the resting metabolic rate, we've said already that it accounts for about 70% of energy expenditure per day. So let's do some basic maths. So basically, think about it from this perspective. So 15 calories per day over 10 years, okay, is about 15 to 16 pounds of body fat that you will acquire over this period of time. Okay, and that's really just a conservative marker. So the key take-home message is, as we're getting older, we're losing muscle mass. If we don't do anything about it, okay, by engaging in purposeful physical activity, okay, the chances are our resting metabolic rate is going to drop. If we put that together with a diet that is really low in calories, which also reduces our resting metabolic rate anyway, it's a perfect storm. You're going to put on weight, not lose weight. Okay, so basically, it's a 4-point problem, okay? Fundamentally, okay, we're losing muscle mass, we don't have enough muscle tissue, our resting metabolic rate is dropping, okay, and we've got too much body fat. Okay, so resistance training in essence involves moving things that are heavy. It's either moving your own body weight, okay, or it's moving external implements, okay? But the key thing about resistance training is what it tackles. It tackles what we call fat-free mass. So fat-free mass, in essence, is everything apart from fat. So it's all of your organs, it's your bones, it's your muscles, it's your connective tissues. As I said, everything that isn't fat, okay? But obviously, muscle is the main component and the key constituent that we can significantly affect. And we want to affect that, in essence, by using exercise, so purposeful exercise. So, does resistance training contribute to weight loss? It's kind of a bit of a yes and no, but actually it's more of a yes than it is a no. Why? Because traditionally, often we talk about the fat burning zone. Okay, and we talk about aerobic exercise, so walking, running, cycling, and so on, and that generally tends to be associated with this mythical fat burning zone. Fundamentally, we just expend calories. Okay, a calorie is a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Now, in terms of resistance training and its contribution to weight loss, now, if we think about its direct effects, so directly, it's probably about 44% less effective than aerobic exercise. But I know a moment ago I just said that it was really effective. It is, but it's the indirect effects that we really need to focus on, because resistance training increases the amount of muscle mass that we have available, which then increases our resting metabolic rate. Okay, which then increases our fat utilization. So, really, as I said, it's a bit of a yes and a bit of a no, but it's more of a yes than it is a no. Okay, we have to think about it in the long term and think about the chronic. What happens with our chronic use of resistance training, not just a one-off event. So let's talk about aerobic exercise and some of the considerations. As I said, aerobic exercise for years has been purported to be, if you like, very relevant for fat loss. Most people that are thinking about losing weight, they will naturally move towards aerobic exercise. It's not that you can't lose weight. Okay, but the problem with it is that, yes, it reduces body fat, which is very, very desirable. Yes, it also improves your cardiovascular fitness and your heart health, which of course is very, very desirable. But it doesn't replace muscle, okay, which means that it doesn't really have a significantly positive effect on your resting metabolic rate. But what about resistance training? So moving heavy things, okay, whether that's your body weight or whether that's an external implement, that replaces muscle mass, which is very desirable. That increases your resting metabolic rate, which again is very desirable, which then as a knock-on effect, as a secondary effect, helps to reduce body fat. Again, highly desirable. And also it improves muscular fitness. Like I said, the average age probably for people watching this is probably between the ages of about 40 and 65. So we know as we get older that we're losing muscle mass, and as a consequence as well, okay, our muscular fitness, okay, is deteriorating. So anything we can do to arrest that is clearly going to be a good thing. But also you have the added benefit as well of spiking up that resting metabolic rate, and therefore aiding fat loss and fat utilization and such like. Okay, so in summary, okay, the traditional sort of ideas, okay, around using exercise for weight loss suggest that aerobic exercise is best for fat burning, okay, via fat oxidation. But actually, that's only a half truth, because that's based upon the acute or direct effects of exercise, okay? And what I mean by that is, yes, at the time, whilst you're doing it, you burn more calories. But actually, if we think about the longer term, which is what needs to happen, and that's the mindset that we need to have to lose weight, okay, and to improve our health and fitness, it means that we need to take a much longer term approach, okay, to how we manage exercise. And therefore, it's probably better that we use resistance training, i.e. lifting heavy things, okay, because in the longer term that increases our fat-free mass, so the amount of muscle you have available, which then as a consequence also improves your resting metabolic rate. So what we see it elevates your resting metabolic rate, which then means that actually at rest, when you're not doing anything, okay, so after you finish exercise, you're still burning calories. And that's what we want for long-term weight loss, okay? But also bear in mind as well that, okay, by having better muscular fitness as well, you help to reduce the effects of aging, okay? And that 5 to 7% loss in muscle strength. So I guess to summarize, okay, it's problematic for weight loss and also for maintaining weight loss if all we do is aerobic exercise or we just diet alone, okay? It's diet plus resistance training, okay? That's where the evidence is, and that's really where you'll get the best results. So for some practical guidance, practically what we know is that actually, and again, it's slightly counterintuitive to a certain extent, is resistance training first, but obviously aerobic exercise is good for cardiovascular health. okay, because of the direct and also the indirect effects. In terms of putting together a resistance training program, the type of things you want to consider, okay, if you're relatively untrained and also unfit, okay, is you want low volume and low intensity. So what that means really is you need to start small. So probably starting with body weight based exercises, okay, push-ups, pull-ups, and push-ups, press-ups, and so on. And in terms of the number of repetitions, you want to keep it relatively short. So between 8 to 12 repetitions or 1 to 2 sets. Progressively, as you increase your personal endurance, okay, then you can increase the volume somewhat. Okay, but that really is something that takes place over months. So you need a long-term approach. Okay, in terms of exercise, the actual type of exercises, okay, changing the order. So, say for example, doing a lower body exercise and then doing an upper body exercise is probably the best thing. Is probably the best thing you can do, because then what you're doing is you're alternating between upper body and also lower body. Okay, so for example, a press up, then followed by a squat. Okay, and that can be using body weight, or you can use external implements like machines and dumbbells and so on and so forth.